Hello guys, welcome to Solving Solutions, your number one channel where you get solutions to all your solving problems. It's nice having you in class again today. How have you been? We are going to show you how you can create or let's say design your study area map. Study area maps most times are requested when you're carrying out any research or project and you want to validate that yes, your data set is actually falling within the specified, let's say maybe state or country or some other stuff. So there are different reasons why you would need one, and we are going to show you how you are going to get one on today's video, right? Good. So the country data is needed, the shapefile, the local, the state data is needed, that's the state boundary, right? The country boundary, the state boundary, the local government, and the study area boundary are also needed. That's the area of interest, right? Good. So you are going to modify the shapefiles and symbols accordingly. Go to map layout, add the country data map, set up, modify other map elements, lock the layer, very important. Then repeat the process for the other maps. That's where inset maps comes in, right? So there's a video on the channel where I've shown you how you can use or let's say um, carry out, yeah, how you can insert maps, right? Good. How you can perform map insets, good. So you do that, then create a final borderline, export as PDF, any other business. Right now, this might not follow this order, it can actually follow this order. However, this is the guide we are going to go through or we are going to use for today's video, right? Good. So you can see on the layer panel we have the different layers we've actually told you that we need. So let's zoom this state boundary to good. Let's zoom into layer. So we have the state boundary that shows the different states of Nigeria, right? Good. So we can just put that off. Then we have that of Falga, right? Good. Let's zoom that to. Okay, let's zoom River State to layer first. We have that of River State, right? Good. So we need to bring this down to. Good. Let's bring that down. Then we have that of Falga in River State, right? Good. Then we now have Old Port Harcourt Township within what? Within Falga, right? Good. So that's the idea behind it. So we are now going to show this in a what? In a study area map, right? So the first thing we are going to do now is that we need to show the different states, or let's say we need to modify zoom to layer. We need to modify this state boundary by their changing the symbology. So the first thing is that you double click or you right click and you go to properties, right? Good. So under layer properties and then under symbology, we go to um, is it categorized symbology, right? That's categorized symbols, and then the value we are going to use is actually the name. Now the value, the reason why we want to use name is that state name, right? The reason why we want to use state name is because we want the state names to be classified. Yeah, we want the state names to be classified and then assigned different colors, right? Good. And assign different colors. So we now know that each of the colors here represents each of those states, right? Good. So upon doing that, we can just apply that and click on OK. So we now have our shapefile modified, and then all of the state boundaries or all of the states are now having what? Their respective colors, right? Good. We can still go back to properties and then make some edits on the label, right? Good, on the labels. So let's come to labels and then we are going to what single labels, right? Good. And then the field we need for the labeling is the state name. So let's use Comic Sans. Let's use Comic Sans. Then let's use bold italics, right? Good. Then I should just reduce this to let's say 7 or 8, right? Good. Then let's leave it at black. Apply and let's see how that goes. Let's see how that goes. Let's say okay so that we can see it on our map canvas. Good. So we can now see each of the states have been labeled accordingly, right? Good. Now this is just the beginning of what we are going to do, right? Good. So by the time you click on this drop down, you will see the different states. You can decide to put some of them off, put some of them on. So now let's come down to our state of interest, which is what River State, right? Good. By the time we put it up, you can see that this other state um, layer that is here, that's what we have. So let's also put this off. You can now see that this particular state boundary is off that of Rivers State, right? Because that's our area of interest. So when you have categorized your symbols, yeah, when you've categorized the symbols, you can actually toggle through and then turn off or turn on any of the states or any of the layers, yeah, any of the layers, and then you can modify their colors. You can also modify what the legend, right? Good. So upon doing this, I think we are ready for inserting the first map. So we go to project, then we go to what new print layout. You can actually use the shortcut Control P, right? So let's call this study area map, right? So let's say study area map. Then we hit enter. So we've created what, a new print layout. Good. So this is actually the print layout, and the first thing we want to do is that we want to choose the page properties or the paper size we need, right? Let's leave it at A4. A4 is big enough for what we need, and then let's leave it at what, at landscape. So you go to add items, you go to what, add map, right? Good. Now you just specify where you want to add your first map. Now remember that you are going to add several maps, therefore you need to manage your space very well, right? Good. You need to manage your space very well. Now we need to turn off the OSM because we don't need the OSM on our study area map. So we now come back to our map, then we can just refresh. So we have only, good, we have only the boundary map, right? Good. Now we can still modify the scale. Good. So we have what, we have the state's boundary fixed. The first thing, or let's say the next thing, is to just lock the layers so that whatever modification you do on the other side will not actually reflect here. Now you can decide to turn off the labels because you might not need it. So let's go back, but if you need it, you can leave it there. So we are working on the state boundary, right? So you right click and then you click on show labels so that labels will go off because they were on the other time, right? Good. Now let's go back to our print layout. When we're on our print layout, we just refresh it. Remember, we unlocked it. That's why the correction was able to be effected on the what, on the print layout. So now let's lock it back so that we don't have issues with that. So now that's the first thing. The next thing we are going to do is to bring in what, the state boundary. So we are going to just turn this off, then zoom this to layer, right? Good. When we zoom this to layer, now we have decided not to change the fill pattern. So you can decide to change the fill pattern if you want. So just double click on that. So we still come down to symbology, then under the single symbols, and then simple fill, we click on the fill type, and then we are using what, simple lines, right? Good. Then let's make the thickness about 0.5. Then let's apply that and we say okay, right? Good. So we have what, we have the state boundary. We have actually modified the fill, right? Now we can decide to bring that into our print layout. So let's go back to our print layout. Good. Now we go to add item, we go to what, add map, right? And then we try to create a space for it. Let's say this space. Good. So we have what, we have the state boundary there, somewhere around there, right? Good. Let's still work on the scale. Good. So we have what, state boundary fair enough. So we can decide to turn off that other layer there, or should we leave it there? If we are going to leave it there, then let's also modify the fill pattern, right? Good. So we right click on that. Then under simple fill, we still leave it at what, simple line. However, we are going to change the color from that black to something like what, to red. Then we also change the width to 5 and then we apply and then okay, right? Good. So we have that of Falga, which is what, inside River State, indicated that yes, Falga is actually what, within River State. And you can also see this old Port Harcourt township within Falga, right? Good. So we are actually on track. So let's now come back to this. So we've actually modified it. Let's refresh this and see how that goes. Perfect. So we now have what, the state boundary, state's boundary that actually shows the country, right? Good. So we can decide to also lock this layer. We are going to come back to each of them because we are going to show the grids and all of them, right? Good. Then we now come back to, let's say, showing the local government, right? Good. So we come back to showing local government. So we can decide to put this off, then zoom this other one to layer, and you see that within the local government, our main study area is actually validated, right? Good. So we come back to our map canvas. Since this other layer is locked, we can just come back to add items, add map, right? Good. Then we decide to specify another boundary for the local government, right? Good. So that's local government. Let's see the scale. Good. So that's the scale we are going to use for the local government. Then let's now get what our area of interest. That's what the study area, right? Good. So this is the study area. We need to also modify the filling. So we right click, or sorry, we double click on it. Then the simple fill, we make it simple line. Then we also keep the width at 0.5. Then we change the color to something like blue, right? Good. Let's change the color to blue and let's leave it at that. Let's zoom that to layer. Good. So we have what the area of interest, which is actually the old Port Harcourt Township, right? Now let's come back to our map canvas. Since we already have this there, we can just decide to, okay, before we do that, let us minimize this and put this on because we need to effect this modification on what we already have here, right? Good. So let's refresh this before we lock it. Good, it has been effected. So we can now lock the style and then lock the layer, right? Now let's come back to the old Port Harcourt Township, which is this. And let's zoom this to layer. Good. We are now going to add this to our map canvas. Sorry, we are going to add this to our print layout, right? Good. So we come back to our print layout. Since the last one is locked, we are good to go. We can decide to add another item, add map. Then we just select the region where we want it to be displayed. Then we have it somewhere around there, right? Perfect. So we now have 4 maps joined together in a particular layout, right? Good. So the next thing we are going to do is that let's also lock this up so that modifications will not be changed. The next thing we are going to do is let's just give it a boundary. So we go to what add rectangle. So we just select that rectangle. Now the rectangle we are going to add will serve as a frame, right? Will serve as a frame that covers our map. So I think this is actually framed up well. It's framed up enough. Sometimes you can start with this, other times you can continue with it as you progress. So for us to modify it, we just for us to modify it, since the rectangle is selected, as you can see, you go to style, you just click on this, then you go to what simple fill, right? Good. Now one thing you need to understand is that this stroke width, we prefer leaving it at 1. Let's delete everything we have here. We prefer leaving it at 1.0. Now 1.0 is bold enough, right? Good. So you can decide to make it, let's say 0.5, or you can decide to make it let's say 0.7, right? Depending on what you want to do it with. So we decide to leave it at 1.0, right? Good. So that's the fill. Then the next important thing is this transparency. You can see that you are actually having it covering your map. So you can decide to change transparency to this, right? So you can now see through your map, right? Good. Then you still have your fill. Now how do you now make the fill to show without actually taking it off the map canvas, because it's as though we can't see the fill again, right? Good. So we come back to style. Then the opacity is still there, right? Good. We go to simple fill. Then under simple fill, we go to outline and then simple line, right? Good. Now the outline, let's come back here. The outline and simple line actually changes, or yeah, it changes the covering, that white covering that you saw earlier that covered the old maps. It made it what an outline. the way we've been modifying our shape files earlier, right? Good. So you just do that, and you have what? You have a borderline, or let's say you have a boundary line. So you can see that the map is getting formed, right? Good. So the next thing we are going to do is to get the grids for each of them. However, whenever we click on this rectangle, or whenever we click on the map, we see that the rectangle is obstructing the progress or the process, right? So what we are going to do is that we are going to lock it. When we lock it, it no longer obstructs what we are doing. So we can now select each of the maps. If I unlock it, however, is still going to obstruct the individual maps that we are working on, right? So this is also something very important you need to know. So when you see that the rectangle which serves as the borderline that you've created is obstructing you, or let's say it's making you unable to select the individual maps, you can decide to what? You can decide to lock it. I don't know if it means to keep it inactive. So you can decide to lock it, and then you can now select each of those maps that are within what? Your frame, right? Good. Now the next thing is that let's look at some of the map elements we need. Let's move this out a bit. It's very close to the borderline. It's very close. So now let's try to go to the let's try to give it the grid. So we have selected the country boundary. This serves as our country boundary. So the next thing we are going to do is to go to what? Is to go to grid, add a grid. We have a grid one, right? Then we modify the grid. Good. Now we are going to select the CRS. Good. For you to be able to, for you to be convinced, yeah, for you to be sure of the CRS, you can decide to select it. So let's use the project CRS, which is what? WGS84. And then let's say the interval of, good, let's leave it at 4.5. Then let's also leave this at good. So we have what? The x interval at 4.5, then we have the y interval at 3, right? Good. Now the next thing is that we are going to make this our line style to be very, very faint. We are trying to modify the grid, right? We are going to make it very, very faint. So for you to be able to achieve that, you can click on this drop down. And when you click on this drop down, you now toggle on the opacity. As you toggle on the opacity, you will see that yes, the opacity is getting faint from the bright opacity you add, right? Good. So let's leave it at something below 50%. We don't really need it to be too loud. So this is fair enough, right? Good. Let's now come back. Sorry, we still need to go back to our modify grid. The next thing is for us to display the coordinates. It's for us to display the coordinates. So now let's come to draw coordinates. Good. Now we've drawn the coordinates. We need our coordinates in degree, minutes, and seconds, and it should also have what? A suffix. By suffix to show if it is easting or northern, right? So we have this good easting or northern, right? Let's still scroll down to change the coordinate precision to 0 so that we don't have those 0.000. Then we can now decide to change the font style to something like I prefer using Times New Roman, and then I also like it was bold, right? Good. Then we can still come back to changing the orientation. Yeah, the orientation. That means how do we want the coordinates on the left and on the right to appear? Do we like it horizontal or we want it vertical? I prefer leaving it vertical, so I can decide to come down to the left. That's under the left. We change it from horizontal to vertical ascending. Then we also change the right from horizontal to vertical ascending, right? Good. So you now see what the coordinates being displayed. Let's reduce this. It's obstructing the coordinates displayed at the other end. Let's reduce this a bit. Let's move it out a bit as well. Good. I think it's fair enough like this. Now, if you look closely, let's still bring this down. You can use the navigation key on your keyboard to actually take the map to your left or to your right, because that's actually what we are doing now, right? Good. Now if you look closely, there is no frame for this particular map even as we are modifying it. So we are still going to come down to either let's uncheck this, either we give it a frame from here, which you can see it already has a frame now, or we go to our grid, which is let's still come down to our grid. We go to our grid 1, modify that grid, and then we specify a frame that we want to give to it somewhere around here. We are that okay. Good. We specify a frame we want to give to it somewhere around here, right? Good. So let's give it a zebra nautical, and that's actually too big. So let's reduce the frame size to one, or let's see what 0.5 gives to us. So let's make it 0.5. I think 0.5 is fair enough. Let's leave it at that. So this is how we have decided to leave this particular map. You can still decide to do a few things when you're working on yours, because the aesthetics depends on how well you can actually manipulate the map, right? Good. So we are done with the first one. We are going to do the same thing for all of these, right? Good. So we are going to run through them. Also, you can change the grid type from solid to, let's say, cross. So instead of having lines, you can just have this cross to show what the grid points, right? Good. So we are going to use cross for the both of them, since we have used line for this other two, right? Good. So we are progressing gradually. Good. So we have actually been able to get the grid interval for the area of interest, which is actually the old Port Harcourt township, right? So we are using cross. We need to just work on the opacity, right? Good. So let's come down a bit, then just drop down. Good. So now that we have been able to grid the four maps, we can decide to add some other map elements to our maps, right? Good. So I need to multiple select all of them. So use the Control Shift, then you select each of them, right? Good. So they later form a group. Now the essence of having them as a group is that I want to adjust their positions without affecting the other one. You can see now I'm trying to create a space or maybe even extend it to this end. You know, you use what the Control Shift. Yeah, use the Control Shift, right, and you select multiple. It's actually like creating a group, right? Good. So with this, I have been able to move the four maps at the same time. You can see them. We have been able to move the four maps at the same time. Good. So now we need to see where we can create a space for, let's say, the title and then some other information that we are going to need, right? Good. So that's enough. So we now go to add item. We go to what add label, right? Good. So I just want to have a description here as what map of study area, or let's say study area map, right? So we'll call this study area, sorry, that should be EA, then that's study area map, right? Good. So we can decide to work on the appearance, that's the fonts and the sizes, right? So let's use Comic Sans. Depending on what you want, you can decide to use any of the font style and the font types that you want to use, right? Good. So let's use something like let's use 16, right? Good. Let's see how that goes. Good. Study area map. Then let's also work on the positioning, right? Let's work on the positioning. So let's keep it at the center and then at the middle as well. So study area map, the font is actually small, so we can still decide to increase it from 16 to, let's say, 20. Good. Let's see how this appears now. Now, this all depends on how you want it to be, right? Good. So this is what study area map. The next thing we are going to look at is to what is to add a not arrow somewhere. So we can just go to what add element, and then we have add not arrow. So let's see. Good. So we have the not arrow somewhere there. Let's change the color just for the purpose of having the not arrow there, right? Good. Then the next thing we need to do, we can just copy this. That's Control C, right? Then we can just paste it anywhere, and then we need to give it a name, Nigeria, right? Good. Let's set it that to Nigeria. So this is Nigeria. Then you can decide to add a scale bar if you want to. You can decide to add scale bar if you want to. This is Nigeria. Then we can do the same thing for, okay, the scales of this have been distorted. So let's see what we can do just to have our scales and our maps well scaled, right? Good. So good. So they are fair enough. Let's do same for this. Good. So we were trying to label them, right? So let's still copy this and then paste it somewhere around here. That's River State, right? So we can decide to click and then take this one somewhere there, and then let's call this River State. Then good. So we've actually done the labeling, right? Good. Now the next very important thing we need to consider is that we need to give directions that try to connect arrows, right? Good. Arrows that are actually linking the different maps. So the first thing is that we need to come back to this national boundary, and then we need to change the color of River State, right? So let's come back to our map canvas, which is somewhere around there. Then we need to take this off. Let's still zoom this to layer. Good. Now let's go down to where we can find reverse state. Then let's turn that off. Good. So we've turned it off. Let's now go back to our map canvas. Then let's unlock this particular layer so that we can modify what we have there, right? Then we refresh. Good. It has been modified. So let's lock it back. The next thing is for us to use this arrow command, or let's say this arrow tool. It means add arrow. So we click on where we are coming from, then to the other point, then you right click. Good. So you have an arrow, right? Good. You have an arrow, so you can just click on the arrow to, let's say, change the color. Sorry, let's click on the arrow. Where is it? Not arrow, polyline. Good. Select the polyline. You can change the color from black to whatever color you want, but let's leave that for now. Good. So this shows that this is reverse state, down to reverse state, right? Good. Then we can still get another north arrow going from what, from this part of reverse state down to Falga, right? Good. Then we right click again. We have another arrow there, right? Good. Now we can still get another arrow that is coming down from Falga to what our area of interest, which is what the old Port Harcourt township, right? Then we do that. Good. So you can decide to modify the arrows and then the colors and then some other stuff. So basically, this is how you run through study area map design. Good. As we said earlier, you can decide to add a skill bar somewhere. So you come to add item, then you select add skill bar, then you draw it, and then you place it wherever you want to place it, right? Good. So when you are done with all of these, we have what, the country boundary, state, the local government, and the area of interest. When you're done with all of these, you can now decide to what, export, right? Good. So with this, you've seen how to add labels, how to insert maps, how to use the direction arrows, how to lock them, and some other stuff that you've learned, right? Now you just click on this export as PDF, or you come to export as image. If you want to attach it to your project, most times it's always better to export as an image. However, if you just want to view them, which most times is not the case, you just want export as PDF. Since we want to just view it, we just want export as PDF, right? Good. So we are working on a folder called study area mapping, and the name of the file is what, study area map. The file type is what, PDF, right? So we just click on save. Save. The process has actually begun. Good. So it has been exported successfully. So we are going to access the folder and then also access the file. We can just click on this link to take us to the folder, right? Good. So this is the folder we are working on. These are some other files in that folder. However, this is our study area map. So let's just click on enter to open it. Good. So this is actually the study area map we just designed. So it's fair enough to be used. So this is the process you use to design what, your study area map, or study area map of what, your project location or anywhere. So thanks for coming to class. If you have any question, if you have any suggestions, comments, you can always reach out to us via any of our handles, or you send us a mail. And if you have any tasks like this that you want us to assist you on, you can always contact us, and we will get back to you as soon as possible. So until we see you on the next video, ensure you keep staying safe, and have a very good time. Bye.